Let's talk about how to set up your leads chart. We're going to use this in our next meeting, but I want to go through sort of an anonymized version of what it looks like. And so what we're going to start with is the spreadsheet that I sent everyone in email. And what you're going to do is go through your match lists. Here I've used my husband's match list, and I've done just his ancestry results. So what I did was I added a row for 400 to remind me not to go above that. And I've added a row for 90 to remind me not to go below that. That's the range of centimorgans that's best when you're using the Leeds method. It doesn't mean you can't go lower than that, but start with the 400 to 90 range and see if you can notice groups that start to emerge. So of course you can tell here I've sort of anonymized the names, but I filled in the centimorgan values and also the relationship category. If you're not familiar with Excel, you can fill in the first box and then shade all the way down and use fill down in order to do a bunch of them at once and not have to keep typing ancestry over and over. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to the shared match list, and we're going to look at this first match that's 251. Now, some of you may have some that are 400 or high threes, but my husband's closest is 451. I'm sorry, 251. So we're going to go and look at that match first. Now, because I can't record and go to the live ancestry site, what I have are some screenshots here. So his first match, KA, is 251 centimorgans. And what we're going to do then is we're going to click on the username, and that takes us to the page where it shows the match with her. And we're going to go to shared matches. If you see this here, we're going to come back to trees and ethnicity later, but we're going to go to shared matches first. So KA is going to be the first person on our spreadsheet where we put an X. So group number 1, she's going to be the first X. We're going to figure out a color to shade that, and I usually go over here and just start with red, but you can pick any shade you want. And so every person that's a shared match between my husband and KA, I'm going to color red. So I'm going to go back over here and I'm going to look at, let me pull up the right screen, and I'm going to choose this JV and all the ones that are shared matches down to 90 centimorgans. When I do that, obviously I can't show you all the screens, but when I do that, I have a red section that looks like this. I'm going to, for now, I'm going to hide these so you don't see them and get distracted. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill in all the ones in red that match or shared matches with my husband and KA. So this one here, these 3, and so on. And we're going to stop at that 90 centimorgan threshold for right now, because that's the great-grandparent to second great-grandparent range. And we're going to work on that range first. So then what do we notice? We notice here that this one is not matched, this one that starts with W. So we're going to go back to the match list and we're going to choose this match here, W, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to click on W, we're going to look on shared matches, and then we're going to fill in all the matches that match him. So let's go back to the chart. And this is going to be our second one. Let me copy from the first so that you can see it in progress here. So this is what we have from the first match. So this is the next one we're going to compare because it doesn't have a shared match yet. So we're going to call that one our X. We're going to pick another color for it up here. And I just normally go in order, but you can make them color-coded however you want. And then we're going to find all the shared matches between my husband and W. And we're going to fill those in. So I'm going to unhide this so you can see what it looks like. And what we end up with are these two more, these two more. Do you see how these are shared matches? They don't have anything in common with column 1 or group 1. They're a different set of matches, likely a different side of the family. Right now, what we're sorting is probably mom's side, dad's side in these higher matches, maybe one grandparent, another grandparent. We'll have to see how that plays out. And then what we're going to do is we're going to work on the next place that doesn't have a color. So if you look here, the next one that's not colored in anywhere on the rows is this one right here, and that's P. Let me scoot it a little so we can see PL. So PL is the next one we're going to do. So if you keep doing this process, this is what it ends up looking like. PL is a match in common with 3 people, other people, some of whom are also matched here in group 2, but there's one more we pick up here. Then the next blank one is this one, and that has a shared match with this one as well. So we have 4 groups of shared matches. So let me talk about a couple things you're going to do next. And we're going to do this live in our next meeting, but I won't be able to record it or share it on the screen. So I wanted to make sure that you had a visual. What you notice here is that we have a cascade of these X's. That's kind of like the first match that shows up that doesn't match any others. But what you might notice is that it matches some of the ones above, and that's normal. So just fill those in, but this is the first place that we chose a match and then looked at shared matches. And this is the first place we showed a match and showed the shared matches. If you happen to have more who don't match, at this point, we only have 4 groups. Everyone's placed in a group. But if you happen to have more, you would go on to group 5 and group 6 and group 7. And what you'll notice is that I have room here for 10 groups because sometimes it takes that many. So that's an important thing to keep in mind, is you may have to go beyond 4. So we're going to look for a couple of patterns here. The first thing I want you to notice is how similar group 2 and 3 are. There are some common matches between them. That likely means that this is the same family group. It's probably the same family group. Not necessarily, but probably. So that's something to keep in mind. If you have a lot of columns that look like that, what you want to do is put them next to each other and see if you can figure out a pattern to how they're connected. And we'll talk more about that with some examples in the meeting. So there are a couple things I want you to do after you do this process for your 400s to your 90s. Is if you know someone and you know their maternal or paternal, label that. So my husband does have one cousin that we've corresponded with. See if I can find her name right here, Mary. We know that she is maternal. We know what family line she is. We know what common ancestor the 2 of them have. That's the only person who I recognize in this list. So what that tells me logically, we still have to prove it, but logically, that anybody who matches her is likely a maternal match as well. So they're all matching each other, this group 1. So I can tentatively say that these are maternal matches, or at least I'm going to investigate them as maternal matches. And then if I don't know anything else, And maybe you'll feel more comfortable if you put maternal with a question mark, and then you come back and actually look at that. So if you'd rather do a question mark, go ahead and do that if that makes you more comfortable. But this is the one, Mary right here, who I know how she's related. And I've also figured out she's not related to my husband's father's line. So she's a clean line for the maternal part of the family. So the other thing I know is that she's what we call a maternal paternal. So she is my husband's mother's father. So let me write that here, maternal paternal. We call it a mat pat. So she is a maternal match. She's my husband's mother's father's line. So I already know that that's a very distinct line of his Irish family that's been in America for a long time, since the 1850s, 60s, 70s. So this line is the one that I actually would have expected to be the largest one. So think about some of those things that you know. If you're not sure, use question marks, color code, whatever it is that you want to do there. Look for overlap in the groups. So like I said before, groups 2 and 3 have some people in common. And the more matches you have, you'll probably notice the more overlap you have between a couple of columns, especially if you have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 columns. You're going to see some overlap. Now we're going to look at trees. We're not going to do this online because it's too difficult for me to do that and to show you what that looks like without being able to anonymize the information. But I'm going to go through each one of these lists, people, and I start at the beginning and I look at the tree. Does this person have a tree? If so, names in common, locations in common. And if I have an inkling that it's a maternal family, I might be looking for a specific location or some specific surnames or a specific migration pattern, something that I've already established for this line. If I don't know, I don't know. And so sometimes this is where I go paper and pencil and I draw out the trees for each one of these matches, the trees that they give. If they don't have a tree or they have an unlinked tree, I'm still investigating the unlinked tree. But if they don't have a tree, I'm fine with that. Sometimes I will go the extra mile of making a tree for them, just a little 2-3 generations to try to figure out how they fit. But for now, I'm just going to investigate the people who do have trees and see if I can connect anyone. Then we're going to see if there's names, people, locations in common amongst those trees, and try to make one big tree out of this. So you're going to actually start with the tree of the match. So in this case, I'm with the tree of the tester, sorry. So we're going to start with the tester tree. So I'm going to have my husband, his 2 parents, his 4 grandparents, and his 8 great-grandparents to start. And if I know a little further back, that's fine, but that's where I'm going to spend most of my time, is my husband, his parents, grands, and great-grands. And then I'm going to see if I can connect all those trees and people together using what I see here visually with the groups. So you might be thinking, well, he has 4 unique grandparents, which he does. Why aren't there 4 unique groups? See, at this point, I have group 1, and then I have groups 2 and 3 who have some people in common and are likely the same group. And then I have this group of 2 matches who don't match anyone else. The reason why that might be the case has to do a lot of times with the particular family that you're dealing with. So in my husband's case, he has a German immigrant grandfather who married a German immigrant who had been in the country for quite a while longer, her family. So this is probably, if I had to guess, I would think that these might be the 2 grandparents on the maternal side. This is one, and this is the other one. This is probably the one line of my husband's German grandmother, and we're not seeing the German grandfather who's the recent immigrant. So that's my guess at this point, but I don't know. And of course, if you're doing this as an adoptee, or if you're doing this for unknown parent or grandparent, you're not going to have necessarily any theories about who these groups are. So sometimes I do look at it and try to come up with some kind of theory, but I'm not going to move the data in a way that suggests that that's actually the conclusion. I'm going to let the data be the data. So this is just something that we're going to talk a little bit more about. I'm going to show you some examples of endogamy. I'll show you some examples where the paternal family doesn't show up at all, only the maternal family. And again, that's an immigration thing. So there's a lot of different ways that this can materialize. So if yours doesn't look like mine, no worries. I'm going to choose a different person and do that live in our next meeting. So we'll see how that plays out. So email me with questions, and I hope this helps you get started.